80s and 90s. So that was on the side of helping develop different programs for young professionals who, at that time there weren't as many post-secondary education opportunities, but people that you wanted to help move forward to be part of the community, whether in profit or non-profit kind of organizations. And there was a equivalent kind of organization in Calgary, but I don't think it was quite as successful. That kind of movement has moved away a bit because there's some other kinds of things that have replaced it, but it was intended to help people and make them reflect on what they were doing and understanding why maybe they weren't advancing or
that's true.
All that kind of stuff. Yeah. What other questions do you
have? What are the common challenges that you have as a leader?
Well, I mean, it depends. Right, because my position as dean was a lot different than it is now. So you have to figure out and be content with where you are. But at the same time, having only 2 terms as dean and then being forced to step away, I was a bit sulky. But then you realize, well, this is new opportunities to do other things, which allowed me to get involved in the Calgary Airport Authority. And we, had that business plan, opened a new runway. We just opened a new terminal. We've, borrowed $3 billion, did a planning process for the 40 years out, trying to understand what Calgary would need in terms of an airport and transportation and an economic hub. And had I been dean, I would have never had this amazing opportunity to work on such a big legacy project. So I can say, I had a part in making that happen, and we'll see what that looks like over the next 40 years. But if I had been dean, it would have never happened, and I wouldn't have met other kinds of folks doing other kinds of things. So that was good as well. In terms of my position as when I came here, we didn't have a building, we didn't have degrees, we had half the number of students, half the number of faculty. Having the opportunity to go out in a city that there was people who had confidence, they believed in education, it was so easy to raise some money and say, we have this really solid business plan, we know there's a market for additional education in the city, we want to be able to help more students. So do the modeling for this building, which I already had the history of modeling for the Simon Fraser campus. It made it easy, we move things forward, and you celebrate those successes.
Yeah.
So you have to know how to act and when to act, and if one door closes, then there's always a new opportunity somewhere else.
Wow, I heard you say that a lot of job issues in your job. Not as you took on the new positions. That's what
There's always new challenges with all new positions. So you have to you can't go in deciding what needs to be done. You have to listen and get the pulse of the organization, meet all the people, know the players, try to be a quick learner, take some notes, and say, okay, based on all of this and these other things that you've learned over your life, where are some other opportunities that might fit, that you could do things differently? And again, then you go back to, okay, we have an opportunity. We could be somewhere else. We could have our own building. We could build up for degree. We can apply to the province for more funding, and people will all do their part, and it all kind of works. You have to be patient.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just gonna look at the time here. Do you have the
4:25.
4:25. Okay, we have about 15 minutes.
Next question.
It's similar to the challenges part. I know that when as a leader, I have a lot of issues with being a follower and letting go of my ego. Do you have any similar personal challenges that you experience?
We all have an inside voice, and sometimes you get into positions where you just have to be part of that team, and you're not. But you also know that even as part of that team, you can still contribute and make sure that you share what could be done or opportunities or vision. And sometimes you have to be a bit patient. But if you have something that you really think is a significant contribution, you have to find a diplomatic way to share that without undermining the process, without making people think that you're doing it just for your own agenda. You have to make sure you're thinking about the big picture. You have to make sure that you're not just objecting because you're not the one making that decision. So you have to have that little check on yourself. But if you've done that and say, gee, this is a great opportunity, why don't we do things a little differently, then sometimes you have to find other ways. Sometimes it takes a year or two for things to change because you're working in a big organization. But if it's the right thing to do, eventually it will come about, and you just have to be patient, not be sulky, present it at the right time, listen for those opportunities, and make sure that your communication and your evidence is strong. So you have to have both be the storyteller as well have done your research and have all of that written evidence presented in a professional way so that people will pick it up and move it forward.
Yeah, I agree.
So you have to take time to build that foundation. If you have a long enough career, then oftentimes you have all of those little templates of things that you could do, so you just have to change it. It's not quite so hard.
I agree.
But professionalism matters in that case.
Are there things that you do daily to develop your leadership or develop yourself?
I think I always do a lot of reading on a daily basis. I make sure that I follow certain area or magazines, newspapers, other kinds of topic areas on a daily basis. I don't assume that I know everything. There's lots of leadership books that I will kind of just skim over. I still, fall back onto what I think works best for me and what I don't think is a fad, and I try to make sure I don't. There's always those new fad words that, go in and out every kind of 5 years. But you have to be aware of them. You have to know what those trends are. But I think that the best thing is to read as broadly as you can so that if there are other opportunities, then you can move those opportunities forward. But you do have to check yourself always too, I would say, on a regular basis, and usually at the beginning of January or in September, those kinds of, new beginnings of the year. Am I doing what I want to do? What do I want to do in 5 years? How do you make sure you move forward and keep those in mind as you're looking at your career? Because if you don't stop to try to figure out what are the most important things, you're not going to get done. So that planning part has to be done on a regular kind of basis, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for young student leaders?
I think that listening